the most tremendous new musical experience you can have.
Alright y'all, what's up? It's Logan, and it is that time of the year, that time of the decade actually, for me to talk about my top 25 albums of the decade. Now last week I put out my honorable mentions. That was just 10 albums that I randomly chose out of my spots 26 through 50 to talk about, give a little blurb about. Here, I will be going maybe a little bit more in depth about some of these, not as much about others. Just saying a couple words about them, but there's 25 of them, so this will probably be the longest video I've ever put out. I hope you stick through all of it and enjoy it, because I definitely put a lot of work making this list. And I mean, like I said, this is all just my opinion. Yes, I did view these based off of how well they performed to a degree, but for the most part, these are albums that impacted me, that I enjoyed, that I listened to the most. And of course, I feel like a lot of people will agree with a lot of the albums I put on here, but some people may not, because they are ones that I just personally enjoyed more. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it with number 25. Now with number 25, this is by an artist who has very, very poorly underperformed as of late. He has become corny and had a horrible discography ever since, I think 2016 was his last time he put out a good album. But this album, I felt the need to have it on here just because he did have this great run middle of the decade. That's why number 25 is going to Under Pressure by Logic. I thought this was one of the best debut albums of the decade. I loved his mixtapes coming into this, the Young Sinatra series, and I absolutely thought that he outperformed those with this one and just increased everything that you loved about those on this one. He has amazing flows, really good storytelling. It has a good cohesive message throughout the entire album, and I thought that this was one of the better albums of the decade. Obviously, I really enjoyed this one. I hate the path that his career has taken ever since The Incredible True Story. I wish he could get back on track, but honestly, he has slowly but surely become one of those corny white rappers. That being said, none of that can tarnish how amazing this album was, and if you haven't listened to it, I definitely recommend that. Actually, let me go ahead and say all of these albums, if you have not listened to them, I recommend. So my number 24, this is coming from one of the better lyricists of the decade. He has had a very consistent career. Lupe Fiasco, from the beginning of his career with Food and Liquor, all the way through Drogas Wave last year. Incredible career. But here, I am putting Tetsuo and Youth. This album, in my opinion, is his best album. It has some of his best lyricism. It has by far his best song. Of course, that being Mural, the near 9-minute lyrical fest where he has incredible flows, incredible lyricism. I love the path that this album takes. People always tell me that, I disrespect Views a little bit too much, because it does have a path to take, going from, like, it has the summer, it has the winter, it has all... No, I don't disrespect it too much, because it's not a great album, and there is an album that does that better, and that is Tetsuo and Youth. Literally having interludes with sounds that just perfectly describe the season that they're trying to emulate, and then songs that fit into that description as well. So this album, very good, very cohesive album with a great message behind it. Following that, this is an artist that a lot of people just do not like anymore, mostly because of his most previous album that came out this year. Me personally, I enjoyed the album that came out this year. Didn't think it was great, but thought it was okay. Not as bad as a lot of people act. The artist being Chance the Rapper, this album being Coloring Book. Yes, I think Coloring Book is his best project. I know a lot of people could argue with me with Acid Rap. You have a very good point behind that. I think Acid Rap is a great project, but Coloring Book spoke to me more, me being a Christian. Just the messages on here about God and his faith, and how he's trying to spread love to other people, but he still is himself, still... being out there in the world, still having done drugs before, obviously, stuff like that. It's just a very personal record that Chance is unapologetically being himself, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy The Big Day. He is definitely unapologetically being himself, even though you have the whole, I love my wife, that whole meme. I get that. Here, this is the last we've seen of consistent chants that everyone enjoys, and I thought that this was a great mixtape, even though I like to call it an album, whatever. It did win Rap Album of the Year at the Grammys, so great album. Next is my first, but definitely not last appearance by this artist, Kendrick Lamar's Section 80. This project, just absolutely amazing, incredible storytelling. I love the fact that he talks about people in his life and how their stories have influenced him. Very good storytelling on here. If you have not listened to this one, this is a great place to start with Kendrick Lamar's discography. Of course, I would recommend starting with Overly Dedicated just to get the whole story, or if you even have access to the Kendrick Lamar EP, definitely that too, but this is a great place to start just to see where he finally broke out. Rigor Mortis, great song. High Power, great song. Every track on here is a great song. I, again, love the storytelling. Think that this was a great way for him to start his ascension into where he is now, as in contention for the greatest of all time, but definitely the greatest of our generation. And yeah. All right, moving on. The next one, the first appearance by this artist in here, although he actually appears in my top 50 3 times, I believe, but in my top 25 twice, so you can't expect another one from him. Nothing Was the Same by Drake. I thought this album was really good. I personally, at one point, thought it was better than Take Care. Spoiler alert, I don't anymore, so expect Take Care later in the list, but Nothing Was the Same was still an incredible album. The only reason that it doesn't quite surpass Take Care is because it just doesn't have the same cohesiveness that that album does, but this is Drake at his most confident, unless if you're considering, if you're reading this, it's too late, which was in my top 50, but this is Drake at his most confident while still having that mix of the R&B, just in your feels type music, and I thought that this was probably his best mixture of his sounds on a project. Following that, number 20, We Got It From Here, Thank You For Your Service by A Tribe Called Quest. This album came out shortly after the news of the death of Phife Dawg. And a lot of people expected, they're just going to use clips, they're just going to use stuff like that and just kind of have a tribute. No, that was completely false, and they debunked that before the album even came out. This album was actually produced, created before his death, and they were intending to release it. He just happened to die, and it was around the time that they were going to want to release it anyway, so they went ahead and put it out. Absolutely amazing album. One of the best of, I believe it came out in 2017, may have been 2016. Regardless, one of the best albums of that year by far. Love this project. Incredible storytelling. It has a lot of political commentary because it was coming out around the same time that Trump was being elected. So I'm going to say it came out in 2016, I believe. It was coming out around the same time that he was being elected. So, a lot there, but of course, a lot of the same stuff that you expect from A Tribe Called Quest, just very melodic, calming beats, incredible lyricism by Phife Dawg, by Q-Tip, just everything you would expect from an album by them, and it's incredibly surprising coming out in the year 2016, where they had been, they had not put out music in a long time. But A Tribe Called Quest, one of my favorite groups of all time, and I was incredibly pleased to get this album. Following that, number 19, Joey Badass's Before the Money. This is my personal favorite album by Joey. I know a lot of people will say 1999 is probably the best mixtape of the decade. I can't argue with you there. That mixtape definitely made my top 100. But this album was by far my favorite. Some of his best lyricism, some of his best beat selections, some of his just best performances overall. I love the songs on here. And I thought that this album was absolutely incredible. Highly recommend checking it out again. Joey is one of those artists that I pray he puts out another album soon, because All American Badass was an incredible album. And I hope that he can follow that up soon. Beast Coast, disappointing, came out this year. But again, that's not his solo album. That was a collab album. So I'm not going to judge him solely on that one. Moving on, number 18. You've already heard my review from this earlier this week. Rhapsody's Eve. I love this project, love the fact that it focuses on black female excellence. I love the messages all throughout this, love the beat selection, some more eerie, all of them fitting a very cohesive tone where she has her best lyrical performance. She is the best rapper from North Carolina, and I love her work. Moving on, number 17, 444 by Jay-Z. I never would have expected going into this decade that I would put a Jay-Z album on my top 25. Heck, probably not even in my top 100. I thought his best days were behind him. He had Reasonable Doubt. He had The Blueprint. He had the Black Album. Those are his 3 definite classics. You could also throw Volume 1 and Volume 2 in there, and if you want to make an argument for Watch the Throne, sure, but I'm not a big fan of that. I did not expect that 2017 would bring about another classic Jay-Z album. And yes, undeniable, this is a classic Jay-Z album. 444 is his attempt at a grown man album. He is no longer talking about fame in the same way that he did, talking about how he's at the top of the game. This is his version of Lemonade. This is basically his apology for some things that he's done. This is him musing on a little bit of political commentary, a little bit of racial injustice, and overall, just an incredible album where he, again, it is his grown-up man album, and I love this project. After that, number 16, Big K.R.I.T's Forever is a Mighty Long Time. Another 2017 album. Yes, that year brought some good albums. But this project, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Big K.R.I.T, I have been following him since the beginning of his career. I personally loved Cadillactica, even though it got some mixed reviews, but this project just took everything great from that and improved upon them. I love his use of sampling. I love his use of proper beat selection. His use of bass is very fun to listen to in my subs. I love his flow. I love his southern charm. I love his introspectiveness. His use of faith on the project, even though it's not abundantly clear, abundantly out there, the way some artists, like my personal favorite Christian rappers, or even like a Kendrick Lamar or a Kanye West, bring it out. Everything about this project comes together very well. The only complaint I could even have about it is a little bit long, but again, it keeps you engaged, so very incredible album. Moving into number 15, Take Care by Drake. Like I said, this project is Drake at his best. It has his best R&B performances. Maybe not his best rapping performance. I reserve that for if you're reading this, it's too late. And even Nothing Was the Same has better rap performances. But this album is by far his best work so far. It produced some of his best hits. It has his best cohesive feel. That's the one thing that I take back from Nothing Was the Same, is it doesn't quite have the cohesiveness that Take Care does. Take Care absolutely hit in 2011, and it still hits today. It has aged very well. The best aging album by Drake by far, and I'd imagine everyone that's listening to this has heard this album. Moving on, a lot of people are going to hate me for putting this above Take Care, but 2018's Kids See Ghosts by Kids See Ghosts. This was the joint project by Kanye West and K.R.I.T. You know the cohesiveness, the chemistry that they have together. 7 tracks long, about 20 minutes long, and every single track is amazing. Love the focus on mental health. I love the fact that it is one of the only collab albums where both of the artists bring out the best of each other. And whenever you have Kanye West and K.R.I.T. both bringing out the best in each other on the same project, you know it's going to work out very well. So love this project. Love the fact that it's not too long, doesn't overstay its welcome, but every single track is amazing. And Reborn is a must listen to anytime that you need Kid Cudi's humming in your life. Same thing with Cudi Montage, of course. Moving on, number 13, the best trap album of all time, Rodeo by Travis Scott. I did not expect going into this decade, well, I didn't even know about Travis Scott going into this decade, but even going into the past year or so, I would never expect to have a Travis Scott album on my top 25, even in my top 50. He grew on me over the past 2 years. I had a lot of people introduce me to more and more of his work until finally I decided, hey, I'm going to listen to his albums. Because he was one of those artists that I was trying to be a hip-hop purist about. I was like, no, he doesn't put out work for me. He absolutely does. He has actually good storytelling on here relatively for a trap album. Amazing beats. The best beat switches in the game. I love this project. I could listen to it at any time in the world. This album is absolutely amazing. I cannot talk enough praise about it. 90210, Maria, I'm Drunk. I love this project so much. It has one of my favorite The Weeknd features in Pray for Love. I just highly recommend checking this project out. If you have not, it sounds even better in a car, in a sound system, but it sounds amazing through some headphones, through a speaker in your house, whatever. And it's very, very cohesive. So that's my number 13. My number 12, last year this came out, Care For Me by Saba. Only 46 minutes long, relatively an easy listen, but just the storytelling on here is absolutely amazing, specifically on the song Prom/King. He focuses on the fact that he focuses all the storytelling on his depression, and specifically him going through that, having dealt with his cousin's death, another black male who was killed. Just horrible situation, and he just talks a lot of personal details. Specifically, I'll point out on the song Fighter, where he talks about fighting with different people. At one point talking about his girlfriend, where she mentions, you're not listening, you're just waiting to talk. And the chorus saying, I don't want to fight no more because I'm not a fighter. The last verse, very haunting, where he mentions, I'm fighting myself to get out of bed. I'm fighting myself to get out of bed. And then it goes to the chorus, I don't want to fight no more. Very haunting. You can tell he's going through a depression. Of course, he ends this on a good note. I got angels all around me on the song Angels. But this album is absolutely amazing. Very much a vibe to listen to whenever you need sad music. But I highly recommend this project. Please listen to it. That is my number 12. My number 11, Channel Orange by Frank Ocean. This album, oh my god. I love Frank Ocean. And he absolutely was hitting with this one. Amazing storytelling, amazing sounds, amazing beat selections, an amazing Andre 3000 feature. And altogether, I highly recommend everything about this project. Definitely check this one out if you have not. I don't really have too much to say about this one because I have more Frank Ocean to come up. So definitely check this one out. Following this, my favorite album from last year by my artist of the decade according to Spotify, and I cannot argue with that. Taboo by Denzel Curry. So this album came out last year, and I swear I listened to this album for a month straight. I love every song on this. I love the fact that it starts out kind of soft and just moves darker and darker as it goes along that storyline. Yeah, the storyline can be a little hard to tell, but once you've listened to it so many times, you start to pick up on it more and more, and every single song is amazing. Clout Cobain, I could listen to that every single day. Same thing with Vengeance, same thing with Perks, same thing with Taboo, Black Balloons, Blackest Balloon. I love every song on this album. It's only like 46 minutes long, and I could listen to this album every single day. This is probably my favorite album of the decade. It's just not the best. This is one of the easiest albums to listen to, and I love everything about it. Next, Because the Internet by Childish Gambino. This album is not one that I actually listen to the most out of all of these, but regardless, it has amazing storytelling, and it is an incredible album that everyone should listen to. Childish Gambino put out his best work on this album, and I think that everyone should listen to it and would very much enjoy it. So that is my number 9. Not too much to say about that one. Number 8, Kendrick Lamar's Damn. A lot of people say this is Kendrick Lamar's worst work ever since he blew up, but I thoroughly enjoy this project. I thoroughly enjoy the fact that you can listen to it forwards and then listen to it again backwards. I love the breakdown that's being done on the Dissect podcast right now. I think that this is a great album, and I hope that everyone will check it out. I'm not going to go too much in depth about this because we all know Kendrick and we all know what he's done. Next, number 7. You've already heard my review of this one. Came out this year. Best album of the year. Igor by Tyler, the Creator. I love the storyline. I love the fact that he's talking about falling in love with someone, and then throughout the process of the entire relationship, slowly they fall out of love. He hopes they can still be friends, and he is very thankful for the relationships that they've had. That's actually a focus of another album that I will be talking about later on in this video, but this album, I love the blending of genres. I love the beat selections. I love the features. How in the world is a Playboi Carti feature still my favorite feature of the year? I don't know, but somehow Tyler, the Creator, made it happen. And credit to Playboi Carti, he made it happen too. Earthquake's an incredible song. Every song on here is incredible. It's a short album. It's an easy listen, and I love it. Next, number 6, Sylvia Demo by Isaiah Rashad. This album came out in a year where not a lot of actually incredible albums came out, and it was by far the best album that year. Not just talking trash about that year, but this album would have been by far the best album multiple years. This album was absolutely incredible. I love the vibes that it set. I love Isaiah Rashad in his debut here. I love the feature of J-Rock and Schoolboy Q. I love the features of SZA. And I just think overall the cohesiveness of this album, the way it works, the way that I'm able to revisit it, basically in any mood, specifically more in a sad mood, but basically any mood I'm in. This album is a very amazing tone setter and just an incredible album altogether. Now, finally moving into my top 5. These are albums that I could have shuffled in basically any direction. Specifically my top 4. I think my 5th one pretty much belongs exactly where it is. But regardless, all of these were definitely albums of the year that they came out in. First being Malibu by Anderson .Paak. Actually, now that I've said that, I just realized some of these albums came out in the same year. But regardless, you can make an argument for any of them. Malibu by Anderson .Paak. You know my feelings about Anderson. I think he's an incredible artist, and I think this album was by far his best work. I love Ventura that came out this year, but this project had the best mixture of his R&B sound mixed with his rap sound. It had some great storytelling, some amazing beats. It introduced me to the Free Nationals. Honestly, it brought me back to some of my favorite albums. Yes, I know I'm only 21 years old, but I still listen to it. Some of my favorite albums from the classic R&B 70s, 80s, 90s days, with some of the beats, with some of the influences all over it, with some of the lyrics that he chooses here. I think that this album is incredible. I love the summer vibes that it puts out. I love some of the sad vibes that it puts out. Has a little bit of sexual vibes, of course. It is an R&B album. But this album is perfect. Not perfect, but in my eyes, I love this project very much, and I think it is very deserving of my number 5 spot on my decade list. Now, number 4. And I know from 4 through 1, if I get any disagreements, I feel like most people are going to agree on my number 4 through 1. Maybe not the order, but definitely all 4 of these are going to be on most people's top 4 of the decade. So number 4, Good Kid, Mad City, Kendrick Lamar. This is his second appearance on my top 10. Spoiler alert, not his last. I thought this project was incredible. This was actually my introduction to Kendrick Lamar. Whenever he blew up because of swimming pools. The storytelling on here, talking about a kid who grew up in Compton, wanted to be a good kid, but it was a mad city. He had friends. He did some stupid things with the friends, some stupid things with a girl. Ends up in some gang violence. By the end of it, realizes that he needs God to escape all of this, to become a better person. But he is still a product of the city, so regardless of whether he accepts God or not, it is still hard to change. I love this project. I love the storytelling. I love every single song. There are some hits on here, and then there are some hidden gems as well. This is the only album where I can just sit through I think it's either 9 or 11 minutes, whatever. Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst. I can sit through that every single time I listen to it and not get tired, and that track is so long. Love this album. Next, number 3, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West. You all know how I feel about Kanye. How could I not put his best album ever in my top 3? I almost had it at number 2, but the number 2 album was very deserving of where it landed. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy had some of the best features. Now, for an album that is as long as it is, me saying that it's not that long and has this many features, you would think that could bog it down. No, it uplifts it. Kanye gets outperformed on some of these songs, and it's still his best album. It has the best Nicki Minaj feature, and actually the one that made her blow up. It has some great Jay-Z features. Pusha T. It's the album that introduced me to Sci-Hi the Prince. Amazing lyricism. Again, this album is broken down on the Dissect podcast, and I highly recommend checking that out because even if you don't care about the storyline of the album, talking about the samples that were used on here, he used so many samples, he did so many gymnastics with the beats. It's incredible. This album has so much depth in the storyline and in the beat selection. So this album is absolutely incredible. One of the best albums of all time. But number 2, in my opinion, the best R&B album of all time, Frank Ocean's Blonde. This album has so much depth to it. Again, this is another one that was explored on the Dissect podcast. It's an hour long, and there is so much depth into it. Just to mention a couple of things that I learned from that podcast. Number 1, on the song Nights, that is actually the middle song of the album. And in the exact middle of that song, there is a beat switch, which also happens to take place at the 30-minute, 0-second mark. Again, this is a 60-minute album. So at the exact middle point of the album, there is a beat switch where you can tell it switches from more of a sad vibe to a lighter vibe. It talks a lot about past relationships, failed relationships, in a sad light, but then slowly he begins to realize and be thankful for what he learned through those past relationships. Like I said, that was going to come up again. This album is absolutely incredible, has so much depth, and I highly recommend checking out both this album and its season on Dissect. I think that was probably the best season of Dissect, even though the first season had my favorite album. Get to that in 1 second. You all know what it's going to be anyways. But this project, absolutely incredible. I love Frank Ocean. I love his music. I wish he'd put out more, but at the same time, I'm glad he takes his time with it, because that's how we get gems like Channel Orange and Blonde. And finally, my number 1, and for those of you who know me, for those of you who know hip-hop, even for those of you who are just subscribing and watching this because you are my friends or family and know nothing about hip-hop and don't know about my taste in hip-hop, you should still expect this album to be my number 1. To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. I remember listening to this album for the first time in 2015. The day it came out, I was excited for it because I had been introduced to Kendrick due to Good Kid, Mad City. This album comes out, and I listened to it for months in a row without taking a break. There is so much depth that can be unpacked in this album, from the focuses on talks about racial injustice and how America has failed to handle those situations, to talking about his faith, to talking about his depression. Yeah, heck, for Christmas, I asked for a tattoo. I haven't gotten it yet, but I asked for a tattoo on both of my wrists for You and I. You being Kendrick's song where he talks about, it's in the middle of the album where he talks about his depression, how he thought about suicide, how he feels like he's not worthy of love. And then I, where he comes around by the end of the album and he talks about loving himself, how he came out of all of this a better man, better prepared to lead people, and better prepared to spread the love to his community. I love the depth of this album. I love the samples. I love the fact that he kind of brings about some genre bending here with the beats, where he infuses jazz and jazz samples. I love the fact that it has relatively no features. Yes, you do get a Snoop Dogg feature, but that barely counts because all he really does is a line. You get Thundercat and George Clinton on the opening track, and you get the only featured verse is by Rhapsody, which I absolutely love. I've actually done a presentation on this album for one of my classes in public speaking, talking about how this is the greatest and most deep album ever. This is my favorite album of the decade. This is my favorite album of all time. Any genre. I think that this album is incredible. I think it has more depth than any album ever put out. And if you have not listened to this album, you should, whether you like rap, whether you don't. I'm not saying this album will convert you into a rap listener, but if you listen to it and pick up on its hidden messages and its non-hidden messages, you will learn so much and you will become a better person because of it. I love the final track, Mortal Man, where it's a good song, 1, but 2, he has the interview with Tupac where he's asking him questions and using recorded bits of an interview with Tupac that actually fit the answers perfectly. And it's very haunting that these answers given in the 90s apply to today's America. I love the overarching message of the poem that is read at the end of most songs. I love the growth as a character Kendrick Lamar goes through on here that continues through the album Damn. But this is by far his best work, and I hope one day he can top it, although I don't know how he can. But I am very excited to see the rest of his career, and I am very excited to continue to listen to this album for the rest of my life, because again, like I said, not only is this the best album of the 2010s, not only is this the best rap album ever, this is the best album ever. I love this project, and I love Kendrick Lamar. I love all the messages, and if you have not listened to this one, this is the one that you must listen to. So, that being said, This is a lengthy video. I know. I hope all of you stuck around. I hope it was worth it. Hit me up in the comment section if you agree, if you disagree, if you liked all the albums that I listed, but you might put them in a different order. Hit me up with your top 10. Hit me up with ones that you think should have made my top 25 that didn't, whether they were in my honorable mentions, whether they weren't, whatever. If you enjoyed, hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, hit the bell next to my name for notifications. I appreciate y'all watching. I promise I will not put out another video this long for a while. It's going to be a long time till another decade ends, so enjoy this one. I appreciate y'all watching. I appreciate y'all sticking with me for this year, and I will hit y'all up next time.